And part of scaling your business is, as you grow, you can't be across absolutely everything. And so I can't be across everything that's going on here at Best Practice. So what's really important for me is that I know that if we decide on a particular process that we want to implement, that process is getting followed. So each of the management system standards that we work with, whether they're quality, safety, environment, data security, food safety, talk about internal audits as a process control. So how do I know that you're following our process? Like, you're new here in the business and there's a few policies, there's a few ways of doing things, how do you know what to do? And so what we try to do for important, regular, repeatable activities is actually capture that process. So however we do it, like we might do it in a Word document as a flowchart, we might do it in a video, we might have a set of instructions, like a sequencing of events, which means that I can just give you guys stuff to do, go do that process, and I don't have to give you any more instructions. So that's systemizing. But there comes a point in time where you want to say, well, there's a few things that we have to do for regulatory requirements, or because there's legal requirement, or those sorts of things. So then someone came up with this concept, let's do audits. So each of the international standards recognises that internal audits are an important part of any management system, because they're the feedback loop. You do internal audits to verify whether you're following your processes, you do internal audits to look for opportunities for improvement. Getting other people in the business is good, because if they do the internal audits, that forces them to learn the system, because they're going, shit, I need to know this because I need to talk to Bill or Bob or Fred or Jane over there about the process. So I get asked a lot about that. So we have internal auditor training. It's available on our training academy. If you're a client of Best Practice, it's free. It's included in our service because it's important. Learning how to do this stuff is important, so there's a great course. But some top tips for you in terms of looking at internal audits, knowing that they're important, is that it's really important to sit on the fence and not get emotional in an internal audit. So don't get frustrated with the people that you're working with. As an internal auditor, you're like one of these cameras. All you're basically doing is taking a picture or a video of what's happening in terms of status quo. So in fact, if you videoed something happening and went and showed it to the boss, there's no emotion. It's just like, you don't say anything. You just say, here's a video that I took. So an internal audit is, here's a video, or here's a photo of what I took. This is what I observed. Now, part of an internal auditor's role is obviously to verify whether the process is being followed. So you're saying, here's the process that's documented or captured or written down, and here's what's happening, and they match or they don't match. There's no emotion. It's not, I can't believe they don't match. It's just they don't match. And so the language we use in internal audit world or audit world is non-conformance or non-compliance. It's not complying. I think that's a negative word. I don't think it adds any value to the conversation. You just say they don't match. What we saw out there in the organisation is not what you guys documented as the process. So is that a risk? Or is what they're doing right? Is what's documented right, or what they're doing right? Which one's right? It's not your judgment call as the internal auditor, it's the organisation to decide. And often a manager, and there's some of them sitting out here, the managers here will say, no, what they're doing is right. Okay, that's fine. Let's update the documents, or let's update the process, because often business keeps changing and evolving and it goes so quickly, we don't get time to update our processes. So more often than not, we see the results in internal audits being that the systems and what's captured and documented is not up to date. And so people do default to that. Now, why is that important? Well, obviously when someone new starts, the process isn't right. And so you pull out the doc, you think, oh, someone left. So someone leaves the organisation, you don't have a handover, someone new starts 2 weeks later, there's no knowledge transfer. All you've got to transfer the knowledge is the policies and procedures you documented. While you're doing the internal, it's really important to remain impartial, to sit on the fence, and just practice that impartiality piece and just go, they match or they don't match. I think the other thing to think about from an internal audit perspective is the positioning and what's important. I don't think documents, revision, dates, times are an important issue. I think what's more important is to say, well, what are the promises that the organisation are making to their customers, if it's the quality system, or safety promises they're making, or commitments or management objectives, those sorts of things, and then using that as the priority framework. How does the organisation seek to continue cascading the messages through the organisation around policies and procedures, if that makes sense? And so then you audit, that's your audit focus. Focus on the standards. The standards are great, they're good models, they're good guidelines, and if you focus on the standards, that will give you a framework to follow. ISO 9001 is a great document. It gets bagged a lot, and it's not bagged because of the document, it's bagged because of what people think it's meant to do. They think it's meant to be lots of documents, but that's not right. It's how it was interpreted. So ISO 9001 doesn't, at the moment, the new edition, the 2015 edition of the standard, doesn't say that you've got to write thousands and thousands of procedures. It says create a good management system that helps your people deliver the promises you make to your customers. That's what it says. It says think about the shit that could go wrong and fix it, or be prepared when it goes wrong so that it minimises the collateral damage. That's all the standard says. But there are muppets out there in the industry that go and write thousands and thousands of procedures. So back to internal audits, my top tips: remain impartial, sit on the fence, and describe the mismatch between what you're observing the organisation doing out here, what are they all doing, and what the process says. And so then you can report back to the executive and you can say, I went out and did an internal audit and I found that what's written down and what people are doing is not right, it's not different. And so the training tools that we use to start new people are not what they could be.